Welcome, adventurers, to the podcast that goes through everything gaming, with your hosts Benji and Donchap. Wherever you're listening in, get ready to shuffle those cards, roll the dice, and count your victory points, because this is PlayUp and Chat.
Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of PlayUp and Chat. You're currently with me again, Don Jap.
And you're with me, Benji.
And for today's episodes, we have a special episode where we're going to answer a few questions from our podcast listeners, followers from our social media pages, and so forth.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We haven't seen some of the questions yet, so this is going to be interesting. We're going to go through the questions, as we go along with the podcast. And before we jump right in, we'd just like to say, if you like what we do and you want to keep hearing us do what we do, you can follow us on all our socials. We got Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We got a Twitter as well. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/PlayUpMT for as little as €3 a month.
Exactly. And speaking of Patreon, we actually have a new Patreon amongst our other Patreons. And we would like to thank
Teo
Teo
Micallef.
Micallef. Thank you, Teo.
Thank you, dude. You rock.
All right, so going straight into this special episode, where basically this is the reason why we took so long for actually coming out with this episode is simply because we've been waiting for a couple of questions to roll in, and we have actually 8 questions from the form that was public towards everyone on our socials, as mentioned before by Ben, where you could ask us any question in relation to either the podcast, Play Up Legends, Play Up Malta as a company in general. And basically, we have 8 of these questions that we're going to answer. Ben, would you like to take the first one?
Yes, definitely. So, Jason asks, how old were you guys when you started playing board games that are not Monopoly?
P, which is like
Yes.
a tongue smiley, I guess.
Tongue sticking out emoji. Yeah, that's an interesting question. How old were you when you started playing non-Monopoly board games?
I think okay. So if we're saying not that are not Monopoly, so are we including like Cluedo and stuff like that, or are we like excluding all the commercial titles at this point?
I think it would be safe to assume he means like those overly commercialized titles. Yeah. So I'd say like, things like Monopoly, Cluedo, card games like Uno, stuff like that are, people know a lot, I would say.
All right. In that case, I would say my first board game would have been Arkham Horror, believe it or not, second edition,
Interesting.
and I was around the age of 14.
Nice. No way. How cool. So Arkham Horror was your first quote unquote unheard of board game.
Yeah, I mean, it took board game to a whole new level. Mind you, at the time, my cousin Myron did own 13 Dead End Drive.
Okay.
I've seen him set up the game. We never really played it though, so I can't really consider that as my first official board game I played. So yeah, Arkham Horror will have to be my very first. It's the first time I actually looked at the board game and said, "Oh wow, there's something other than what we know, off the shelf."
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people, I think, know board games to be those commercial board games, like we mentioned, Monopoly, Cluedo, and such. And actually, Arkham Horror is an interesting one. So, for people who are not familiar with the board game, could you give us a little, outline of the board game?
So Arkham Horror is based from the books of H.P. Lovecraft. So everyone knows Cthulhu, the spaghetti god monster, whatever you want to call him. I know there was a phase going on at the time. And basically, what you are is a couple of investigators on the board trying to prevent from the Ancient One from awakening. So basically, you're running around the city of Arkham and you're solving clues, you're battling monsters, and basically you're trying to collect these tokens which are known as elder signs. And once you've collected enough of them, you would have sealed the Ancient One in his sleep. However, the board game is going to work against you. So it's a co op game, right?
Yeah.
And the way it will work is that a lot of mechanics on the board will try to awaken the Ancient One either through the Mythos deck, which is basically the AI system of the thing that brings out a new scenario every turn. Whether it's overrun by monsters, it's starting to disturb the sleep of the Ancient One, and so on and so forth. So basically, the aim of the game is just sealing up this Ancient One in his sleep.
Nice. I've actually played this. Well, I can't say that I've played a full game of this because every few times that we set up, if there is maybe one drawback to playing this game is that, it does allow for a lot of players, and people who have this game might really want to bring their whole game group together and play this game. But it is a little bit of an overwhelming board games at times with a lot of things happening on the board. There's a lot of in between turns time that sometimes is lost on newer players to the board game. So I think I would put it up on a little bit of a more difficult rating than others, but definitely it's a good game. You guys should check it out. For my case, thinking back, something that I'd say really kickstarted me as a collector for board games would be that time that you and I, Don, actually met for the first time you and I ever met, and we played that murder board game. Remind me the name of that one. The Murder in
Hong Kong.
Yes, Murder in Hong Kong. That one.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
a
that
social
was
deduction game. Yeah.
Yes, yes, a social deduction game where people have to kind of figure out who the killer is, and you've got one person giving out clues, and everyone else have their own role, whether investigator or bystander. And I think that really got me into the whole world of oh my god, board games are so
So
much
wait,
more.
hold on. It's like, how old were you back then?
That was what, 3 4 4 years ago, maybe. I'd say maybe 20. I can say 20. Yeah, yeah.
All right, you were
Probably.
a bit of a late bloomer into the board game world then.
Yes, I was indeed. I was. But hey, there's always, it's never too late to join, and you can pick up that one board game that sets it off, and that's it. You're into the collecting scene, you're into the board game playing scene, and honestly, there's no better feeling.
All right, so heading on to the next question. So Luke 2003 gave us the question: which board game do you own but haven't played yet?
Aha.
I'm gonna have to look at my shelf. Hold on,
Yeah,
I'm not even quite sure.
you have a good look. I mean, if it was a few days ago, up until before a few days ago, that question would have been answered very easily, Don, because there was Witcher that we just played for the first time, the Witcher board game a few days ago. While you're looking at your shelf, I honestly don't have a game that I haven't played yet. For me, I'm not as big a collector as Don is, so every time I buy a game, I go, straight into it, open it up, play it, play test it for the first time. I'm that kind of guy. But Don just goes, he's got his own collection. He's way, way, way farther on than me. So sometimes there's two or three new board games that enter his shelf. So what are they, Don?
The problem with me is that usually there's a board game I really want to own, get my hands on and own it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't have either time, or we're not enough players, or something comes up where we can't play the board game. Actually, I'm looking back there, and I'm realizing I used to have about 4 or 5 titles, but I've recently just managed to start to opening them up and starting to play them one by one. So the 2 titles I own, but I haven't played as a board game, right? The one straight off the shelf that's I noticed is Seven Wonders Duels. It's a board game I actually bought simply because my partner, my wife, loves Seven Wonders, and I wanted to get a version that we can both play. You know,
Nice.
so
I'm actually surprised you haven't cracked that open and tried it out yet.
I haven't. I really haven't. I really want to at some point. It's basically I bought it for us. Me and her
Yeah.
mostly. But I mean, anyone who comes home and if she's occupied or whatever, I could always crack it open and play it. The second board game that I actually own, and I haven't actually played it as a board game, but I have played the digital version, is Game of Thrones, the board game,
Ah, Game of Thrones.
and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have and I
yeah.
have the expansion as well.
You have the expansion as well.
Yes, the Mother of Dragons. So
Oh,
basically,
nice.
collectively, yeah, I have not played that board game yet.
Yeah, so it takes us back to one of our first episodes here with the digital versus physical, you know?
Yeah,
It's funny that you mention you've played the digital version and not the physical. And I have played also the digital version, and I must say I think it's easier to get into
we
the
just
game.
played it last week,
Yeah,
actually.
we did, and it's much easier to get into the digital game and learn how to play than it is the physical. But
Oh yeah.
for those who don't know of it, Don, give us a little overview.
So the way it works is that it's kind of like think about Risk. Well, it's a conquered, scenario. Basically, you have up to 10 turns to be able to either conquer all seven kingdoms, strongholds, or by the end of the 10 turns, you own the most strongholds. And basically, you do this with a series of events of, you know, marching troops across the land, supporting troops, and so on and so forth, basically. It's a strategy game overall, right? So it's as simple as that. It's a bit complex on the side of when it comes to putting down your orders, because it's not necessarily like Risk where you just kind of say, okay, these troops are moving forward into this area. So there are cards that are thematically according to your house, that give you strength points during the battles against your opponents. And apart from that, you can actually defend against an attack, but it has to be a specific order that that's what they're going to do. They're not going to move from there. You're going to also support adjacent armies just in case they get into a battle or a battle that's coming that you're planning to, march. So that's the basic board game in a nutshell.
Very good board game indeed. I really enjoy playing it with you, even virtually. Moving on to the next question. David asks, which board game do you wish you could play more often but don't, and why? If I can start answering this one, Don. For me, I'm not sure I have one particular board game I'd say I wish I could play more, just because for me I feel like I have certain phases of different kinds of board games, and sometimes I feel like something more strategic, sometimes I feel like something more a bit laid back, sometimes maybe competitive, and sometimes maybe cooperative. Perhaps I don't have one specific one in mind just for that reason. However, there is one game that we've been wanting to play recently that we haven't played in a long time, and that is Blood Rage. It's really,
Yeah.
yeah. It's really because we're getting into a lot Norse mythology, and we're thinking about running between us friends a campaign on Norse and Vikings, and Blood Rage came to mind, and so that's something that we should really definitely kick off the shelf and dive into it once we're getting into the lore of Norse mythology. What about you, Don? What is something that you wish you could play more often?
I personally feel like if I could play each and every board game on my shelf, right, at least once a week in rotation, I would be very happy to do that.
Talk about an
um,
impossible task, my man. How many
I
titles
know.
do you have?
Over 60 at this point, but I mean, just looking at my shelf at this point, I do realize that there is one board game I wish we could play a bit more often, and that would probably be Betrayal at Bardul's Gate, the D&D
Hmm.
themed. the thing
Yes.
the thing is this, I mean, while Betrayal at House on a Hill is like the top favorite when it comes to board games that people play at my place. I don't know why they don't go for the Betrayal Bardul. I really don't know. I mean, we played it maybe two, three times at best. I know for sure we played it twice, but I wish we could play more simply because we haven't explored more possibilities in that regard to see what other scenarios can happen.
It
So,
is
yeah,
it is, yeah, definitely one to play more because of the replayability factor.
I mean, David asked why. I have no idea. I have to actually ask my play group to see why don't they don't like to play that one in specific. But why would they choose Betrayal at a House on a Hill more than Bardul? I have to know now. You got me curious, David. Thank you.
I don't know. If I could say perhaps for myself, I think I might choose Baldur's Gate over the original unless we're not playing the legacy version, because we still do have to finish the legacy version between us, perhaps the legacy version, because for me I would most probably choose the legacy before I choose the original. So if I had to rank them, it would be legacy first, first choice, and then Baldur's Gate second, and then original last. Nothing wrong with the original, but I think the legacy has got a newer touch to it.
I fully agree with you there completely. And heading on to the next question by
Michael.
Michael. So Michael asks, what setup do you guys use for your podcast? Okay, so we're moving away from the board game themed, and we're looking at the more technical side of things. Okay, that's quite interesting. Me personally, well, we both use. I mean, I use my desktop, right? That's the major thing. We're using Zencaster because we're doing this online. So basically, me and Ben aren't actually in the same room while we're doing these recordings for
No.
now.
Yeah, we're on a virtual studio. We like to call it our virtual studio because that Zencaster really is a really good platform to be able to record these and bring people together for podcasts.
Hmm.
But besides that, we also have, on my side at least, I've got my desktop, and we've recently, only just recently, managed to get us some mwah, really good recording equipment. So coming up, we will be using this tech. We got the T-Mix mixer and the Motu M2 audio interface to be able to connect it to the computer, and then we've got the Audio Technica 80 2020 mics, and that all comes up to a nice setup. I'm actually testing this out, and I think it's sounding amazing.
I,
Um,
I
uh,
prefer it over my current setup, mind you. So, but again, I mean, that one we kind of chipped in. Well, you chipped in at this point a lot of moolah, a lot of money in that equipment. But that's not necessarily what you really need to do to start up a podcast. If this is why you're asking the question, Michael, what we were using for our podcast is currently what I'm currently using. The Scorpion. I don't actually have the box in front of me right now, but if you look up microphone Scorpion, something like that, you'll find the model that we were both using, me and Ben, which costs about €40 each. So the thing is this: usually, what you're looking for is good equipment that catches your voice in a clear space. Now, in my case, I was recording inside a pillow for the first seven
yeah,
episodes. So
it's
all episodes were recorded, my head and microphone in a pillow, right? So basically covering myself entirely just for soundproofing purposes, because where my setup is, there's a bit of an echo. I don't know if maybe you've heard it in one of the podcasts just by chance or something, but currently I actually had a soundproof box commissioned, that basically soundproofs the situation better for me, and that's what I'm currently using in this episode right now. So we're improving as we go. Mind you, there's a lot of DIY setups that you could use for such things if you're having that problem. In my case, the soundproof box is actually using a frame, and then inside the frame there's like two layers of towels covering the entire thing. So that creates a bit more of soundproof. So I don't have to put my head on the pillow anymore. I can actually read the questions off the screen now.
yeah, those pillow days were definitely interesting times. But hey, Michael, if it is because you want to start up a podcast, all you need to do is just start recording. Just a basic mic, and then improve things as we go along. Move up from pillow to towel insulated, and maybe someday we'll have a proper audio insulated sound booth.
And also, the first episode I think that we recorded, the very first one that we did together, I think that's the only time I didn't use a pillow because it was a good room. We weren't even using Zencaster. Since we were together, we were using Audacity. That's practically free. By the way, none of the things that we're mentioning, none of the products, none of the items or software that we're using is sponsored. So that's something that we have to get off, from the get go, not to get in trouble. That's the reason why I'm asking.
It's not sponsored, but we like them, so we use them.
Speaking of sponsors, though, we'll just really quickly mention our sponsors that have been supporting us since the beginning of the podcast. We have the Miniature Corner Studio, which you can find them on Facebook. And if you use the code PlayUp21, which is the permanent code that they're using with us, you get a 10% discount off all their 3D printing. These do custom models, and you can actually send them your own version. If you like buy it off Hero Forge or something, you send it to them to do 3D printing. They are the cheapest on the market, and they have a high quality result for this. They also do printing. Unfortunately, the code is not for the printing; it's just for the 3D printing. But still, I'm quite happy with what I have. If you see on PlayUp Legends, we do put up during the break a couple of the featured stuff that they actually do as a 3D model rotating on camera. So that's something you should check out.
And if you're looking to grab some really cool terrains or preset themed 3D prints, you can get them from the giantstower.com. They also do 3D printing, but everything is pre made and pre standard and everything is themed. So you can get your Viking stuff or you can get your maybe ancient Egyptian and Pharaoh stuff. You can go and check them out at thegiantstower.com. And if you use the promo code PlayUp15, that is PlayUp15, all caps, you can get a 15% discount off your total bill.
And our final sponsor that has been supporting us pre PlayUp and Chat, so during last year especially, we have warmongergamesmalta.com, and basically they sell all sorts of geek and hobby related stuff, board games, protection for cards, deck boxes, you mentioned it, they have the RPG stuff as well. And in fact, speaking of RPG, they gave us the code LEGENDS 7987. That's Legends, all uppercase, 7987. This expires specifically on the 30th of this month, which is April, and that gives you a 10% discount off your total bill on all RPG products.
And guys, if you want to buy, these 3D prints or get yourself some board games and stuff, you're going to buy them anyway. Might as well buy them through these awesome, wonderful people who sponsor the show. However, if you would like to sponsor us directly, there is always patreon.com/playupmt.
Carrying on with the episode, my friend. So we have next up Jake. What did Jake ask?
Well, looking at Jake's question is, have you played any non-D&D tabletop RPGs? And what's your favorite or what interests you most? Would you care to start answering that question, Don, or shall I take that?
I'm trying to think here. Tabletop RPGs. Are we still referring to any RPG, pen and paper at this point?
Yeah, I mean anything you can play, tabletop. If I would start, probably something a really good RPG that I've played and that I really love, and I actually have game mastered for, is the Star Wars RPG. There is Fantasy Flight put out a tabletop RPG, the Star Wars FFG, I think it is. Is it?
Yep.
And it is a really really cool game. Anyone who is into Star Wars, a fan of Star Wars, and you just imagined playing a Jedi, exploring the galaxy, you really should pick it up. We actually ran a one shot session. I actually GM'd this for our event last year. One of our tabletop RPG related events. We had lots of D&D, but we didn't have this one Star Wars. It's an interesting find. It's got some new, very unique mechanics. It still utilizes dice for skill checks and ability checks. However, the dice system is very different to what we usually know in D&D. There's a whole element of successes and failures, and then advantages and disadvantages. There's a force dice for force skills. It really gives a lot more power into roleplay and storytelling, and also empowers a lot the decisions of the player. I feel like a lot more than in D&D with that kind of dice mechanic.
I haven't played any other official licensed non D&D RPGs. I know of a lot of different ones. I've read about them, read the rulings and the mechanics. The one that I currently own and I can't wait to play is the one I got for my birthday, the Witcher
Oh
RPG.
yes.
So basically, you play in the world of, the continent where the Witcher is from, and you can pick up a different class, a different race. The whole thematic of it is quite true to the video game. It's done by CD Red, is it?
Yeah, CD Project Red, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, those guys did a good job in introducing the first tabletop RPG in relation to The Witcher. The thing is, this my it's a favorite of mine so far, simply because the mechanics in it differ a lot from what we know in D&D. Like, for example, the most basic of mechanics, which, in my opinion, D&D kind of overcomplicates, and I've been kind of shied away from for a long time, is magic use. The whole system of spell slots and all that in D&D is quite overwhelming for me. However, in The Witcher, it is such an easy mechanic because you're basically using your dexterity, so to speak. It's not really the right term for the mechanic, but just for sake of simplicity, let's call it that. Where you have a set amount of points, and when you're casting magic, you're taking away from those points. However, you can overcast if you want to. However, it will detriment you from also your health. So basically, they stay true to the element of magic within the Witcher world, where you need to sacrifice something in order to achieve something. So while within the rules, if you're performing your magic on a normal basis, you're kind of using the balance of magic wielding, in the chaos form. If you decide to overcast, which is a possibility in the Witcher world, and we've seen it happen in the series, in the books, even in the game, you're going to overextend, and you're going to have to sacrifice your life force in order to achieve this. And that's one of many mechanics which I love in the Witcher RPG. Another mechanic, just really quick, is the fighting mechanic, where basically it's a bit longer, but it gives you a real feel that you're in a fight, rather than, everyone's turn is happening and they're fighting simultaneously. Is the fact that you can parry off an opponent. You might attack, and the guy might parry in a way that it turns into his favor, and he deals damage to you instead, simply because you've done the wrong move. Not to mention, also, there's, how we have the critical role in D&D. So if you get 20, you basically deal double damage, so to
Yeah,
speak, by
yeah.
rolling two additional dice. Sorry, an additional dice to what you already have. In the RPG, The Witcher, if you get a 10 because you roll a d10, not a d20, the,
Oh,
the dice explodes, meaning that you get to roll an additional 1d20. And if that
you
explodes
mean
again,
D10?
sorry, d10, yes. So
Yeah.
basically, if that explodes, it keeps recurring, and this massive amount of buildup of damage happens. In fact, I was watching the RPG being played for the first time online through a YouTube channel, and there was this guy. He had so many exploded dice, right, in this terminology, that he actually managed to decapitate one of the players straight off the bat.
Wow. Yeah,
So
that's actually a really interesting, a really cool mechanic there that you could just it could possibly, so you're saying it could possibly go endless if you keep rolling 10 after 10 after 10.
I mean, if you work the probabilities, and I'm no mathematician, but if you work the probabilities, it might not end up endless. But yes, there is that slight chance. I mean, when I was watching this, it exploded like four times. So he
Wow.
rolled five d10s, in one session, and that was excruciating damage, to the point it was like, listen, it's just a decapitation at this point. Your character is gonna end up headless. Um, so yeah, I love the Witcher mechanics. It's very complex to get into. It's not for the faint of heart. If you want to get into something easy, there are other RPGs out there. But that's my personal interest to start working towards. I'm pretty sure as PlayUp will definitely launch a small campaign for it. You
Oh,
know.
I'm really looking forward. I really do hope that as Play Up, we also do launch a sort of mini campaign for The Witcher, because that'll be really interesting. I really love your choice, but I think let's go on to another question. Next question is actually from Sid. Sid asks two questions. The first question is, what are some good card games for beginners? And the second one is, if you had to pick your most favorite game, be it online, board game, or card game, what would it be? So, first question, What are some good games, good card games for beginners?
I would say personally, if you could get your hands on anything by the Unstable team, right? So like Unstable Unicorns, that gives you a beginner's feel of a lot of card games out there. That's if you want to get into something a bit more heavy later on. I think as babyish as it might look, it's quite a lot of fun. But Unstable Unicorns, I think, is my top choice for a beginner's card game because it introduces a lot of mechanics which are quite vanilla for
Yeah,
other card games to run off from.
definitely.
First time I played Unstable Unicorns, I felt like it was a very dumbed down version of Magic in a way.
Yes, because there are some sort of mechanics and effects that sort of you can relate to after having already played Magic.
What would your answer have been, Ben? Do you agree with this, or do you have a different card game in mind?
I completely and fully agree with you. I really love that game. You know, any card game really from Unstable Games is a really good choice. I actually have a few. I have a cat based one. I have Nefarious Neighbors, which is sorry, Nefarious Neighbors is the expansion. Runes and Regulations. That's the game. Runes and Regulations and the expansion Nefarious Neighbors is sort of a card game slash board game where you're playing also with mythical creatures, interacting with each other's fences and things like that. But I'd say a really fun game that I think is really, really easy to pick up. It has to be Exploding Kittens. I really love that game. I have that. I have almost all the expansion packs for Exploding Kittens. It's really easy to pick up. It's really fun to play. All the expansion packs add new sort of mechanics and fun little ways to play and mess around with your friends. I think it's fun, easy game to pick up for new beginners. And perhaps one that maybe people haven't heard of is Organ Attack. I think Organ Attack is a really fun game, especially if you're into, medicine. Actually, my fiance now, she bought it for me. She's a doctor, and it's really fun to see all the different animated organs and parts of the body, on these different cards, and playing, trying to quote unquote, kill off other person's organs while you play. It's a really fun and interesting game, and it's also a really easy card game to pick up.
And to his second question, if you had to pick up your most favorite game, be it online, board game, or card game, what would it be? I think it will have to be Spartacus.
Really?
Yes, I think.
Spartacus. I thought you were going to say something else, honestly.
No, I think the reason why I would say Spartacus is simply because first and foremost, one of my very first board games, first five, I think it would be, that I owned. So I loved the TV series. I loved the way they bring the stuff from the TV series to life in the card in the whole board game itself, and the interaction between players is just amazing. There's no other board game. I've not managed to find another board game that is even remotely similar to the mechanics brought in Spartacus Blood and Treachery. It just is. It's our family favorite. It's our family go-to board game simply because of that reason.
Yeah, it really is a family favorite. I've played it a number of times with you and with everyone, and I have to say the competition levels run high and the emotions also run high whilst playing that game. So for sure, that's a good pick from your side. In my case, honestly, I'm not sure I have a favorite, but if I had to pick, I would most probably go with Betrayal, because the replayability of it, being able to play it over and over again and possibly getting completely different haunts each time, the way the actual game board is built up as you play and uncovered. For me, it almost feels like it's a new game each and every single time we play. It's also, close to my heart because it's one of those games that you and I, Don, bought together. The Betrayal Legacy version, we bought that together to be able to play through the entire Legacy story as as bros, as friends, and as our play group. So that's also one of the reasons why it is also close to heart. And I just honestly feel like it's a really well put together game.
No, I completely agree with you. Yeah, this is why I say every single time that is my gateway board game for anyone who wants to start board gaming. I keep emphasizing it. I don't know if people agree with me out there, but it just gives you a whole new dynamic of what board games are like out there.
Yeah, if you agree or if you don't agree, listeners, you can send us a message, over our socials or post, or give us your comments. What do you think? Because we've mentioned it so many times. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And moving on to the final question of today's special episode podcast is from Larkin, who asks, "What is the most disappointing class slash subclass in D&D 5e?" Don Chap, take it away.
I don't know if I should answer this since we're playing Play Up Legends.
The thing is, I know you have an opinion. That's why I asked you about this.
You threw the ball in my court. Okay, geez, this is a really hard question. Honestly, I don't know how to answer this.
I know that you have an opinion. I know it. I know.
Okay, all right, fine. I would say personally, the most disappointing class or subclass for me personally is the Bard.
Oh,
I knew you
oh
were gonna
my
react like that.
goodness. Oh my.
I'm
Oh.
sorry. I mean, look, mechanically and even in role playing, I guess. I mean, let's start mechanically, right? The fact that the bard's position in all of this is to be a support in the party, right?
Uh-huh. Yes. Okay.
At least the stigma that people have put on the bard, right? And therefore, a lot of players they pick the bard for this, to role play the stigma, right? Does not match mechanically what the bard can do. And not only does people think that the bard can only sing per se, right? They lose touch of what the other things bards can do. So I think it's not because mechanically it's disappointing only for me, because I really can't imagine in any scenario a bard singing with a magic. I think of bards the same way I think of dandelion, you know
Uh-huh.
that he
Of
just
course.
uses his bardic ability because he's good at he's not good at anything else actually, and it's his only skill to get coin, and obviously he has a flair to sleep with different women.
Okay. So, first of all, obviously I have to give a rebuttal because
You play a bard.
I play a bard. A bard is my go-to character, and actually, my favorite bard is Tibbs. Tibbs the bard. Now, Tibbs is a halfling. Yes, he's a little foot, and he's not your stereotypical bard in the sense that, oh, I want to roll to seduce the dragon. No, like I understand why a lot of people look down on this class because of the certain traits that media portrays the bards to be all seductive and all about that kind of thing. But the reason why I love bards is because they're a jack of all trades. Now I know the ending to that saying is master of none, right? It is jack of all trades but master of none. But when I
But
look
it
at my
continues, you know that, right?
okay, continue, it's fine.
How is it? Jack of all trades, master of none is better than of one.
Yes, yes. And that's what I wanted to get to because it is much better than just having a proficiency in just one thing. Because when I look at my Bard character sheet, I can see that I have almost semi proficient in almost all the skills and proficiencies in a lot of skills. And the modifiers for my skill checks, there's a modifier which is a really high modifier for almost every single one of my skills. And if I had to look at some other characters that I have, I maybe 4 or 5 skills which have decent modifiers, and then most of the others are zero. You know, so I enjoy the bard because it gives versatility in playing. Sure, people don't really play the bard as it's meant to be played, and perhaps that's why you're of that opinion. But hey, that's cool. It's
No,
your
I, I
opinion.
I have to tell you that you are like the only person I enjoy seeing as a player play the class as a bard. You're the only one. I have not seen any other player play a bard the way you do. I mean, okay, there's Odd in my session, right, from Group 3 of Play Up Legends, who has tried to really bring out the non-bias, all the stereotypical stuff is out of the window for him. And he tried to play the bard in a way that makes sense, like you're saying, a clean version, the way it was supposed to be played. Unfortunately, he was taking more of a rogue front line kind of personality, to
Okay.
which then mechanically in episode 3, we got him to change to a rogue completely. We just, scratched that, and he went up. Bars are not easy to pull off. I'm just saying
No,
that,
yeah, bars
unless
are
you're in that
definitely.
mindset. Okay, what
They're.
about you?
I have to start off by saying that I have not played more than a handful of classes, and I do not DM, and I have not DM'd D&D. So
Yet.
yet, yes, I'm working on that, and possibly in the future we might even have PlayUp, maybe another PlayUp League, PlayUp Legends that I'll be DMing in the future.
Okay, let's just take the spoiler out of the way, because a lot of people have been asking recently, when can we start accepting players again? Yes, it is official. Ben will be our fourth dungeon master in Play Up Legends Season 2.
Woohoo!
A lot of work to do there.
Yeah, a lot of work to do, and I gotta be working on from now. So, if I do have to sit back and think, just to give you an answer, Larkin, I might probably say the monk class. Now, I know that probably a lot of our listeners, and definitely there's one player who plays in my own group actually for Play Up Legends plays a monk. But I'm gonna choose monk because I do feel that there is just a little bit of a problem with the subclasses that I think they're lacking in, not just maybe mechanically wise, maybe even role playing and story driven wise, I guess. I think it kind of lacks a little bit to their playability, like not that much I feel has been introduced to the monk since the monk has been introduced. And even its elemental subclass kind of feels a little bit underwhelming when played. If a monk is kind of the go-to for you and you feel like it works for your play style and the way you work, and for sure. I mean, I've just been I've just been kind of insulted by Don's choice on the bard. But I mean, here we go. Everybody has their own kind of opinion on this matter.
Look. The thing is, this is we're answering the most disappointing class, right? If I had to, it's not my least favorite class to have on my table. To be honest, as a dungeon master speaking here, I personally don't like, right, barbarians for sure.
Okay.
Don't like, they're too, in my opinion, as much as they nerfed them in fifth edition from the previous editions, they still are hard. They basically can't die, so you can't even put them in a moment of peril almost. Um, Druids is another class that I personally am not keen on, especially the ones that like to wild shift a lot. A lot of people kind of, at least from the fourth, again, I'm coming strongly from the fourth edition because that's the longest edition I've played and dungeon mastered for. So fifth edition, they kind of fixed it a lot. But back in the day, having a druid on your table they broke it. They shapeshift into animals, and they get away with murder for the most part of the campaign. So yeah, I mean, we're saying disappointing classes for us personally. But then, I mean, if we had to be asked, like, what is the least favorite classes and why, from a DM's perspective, I've got, like, I can count them on one hand at least. There's 5 classes
Yeah.
that I don't like. There's a couple of races I'm not okay with entirely.
And yeah, I mean, this could be a whole entire episode in its own. We've been going on answering questions for quite a while now, and I think we should come to the end of this episode. It's been great answering questions. We'll definitely revisit this final topic. It was an excellent, absolutely excellent question from Larkin. Thanks for asking that question. It fueled a possible episode in the future.
Thank you, everyone, for actually bothering to go onto form and give us the questions that you wanted us to answer to make this special episode. Thank you once again to all our sponsors: Miniature Corner Studio, thegiantstower.com, warmongergamesmalta.com. Don't forget to use the codes that we mentioned midway episodes. Hope you took those down. And if you liked what we were talking about and what we currently do in PlayUp,
You can support us directly at patreon.com/playupmt for as little as €3 a month. Thanks for all your love and support. We will catch you in the next episode.